All right, we're officially live.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the webcast, long-awaited webcast, probably. Some changes with the payroll allocations and the payroll exception table changes that are now available to you as a user. We've talked about this change coming for a while. It's actually been available for a couple of months in payroll exceptions, but we're waiting on another piece with our TRS pathway report that needs to be in place before you can fully adopt this new way of setting up payroll records for employees that are partially federally funded. So whether you've already upgraded to Munis version 2019 or have you yet to upgrade, there's some important information here. Some of it will be a repeat of information you've already seen, but I believe it's important you see both options available to you. So without further ado, let's go ahead and hop into the webcast. So hopefully everybody is already aware of this, that in Munis version 2019, allocations no longer use pay types. And why does that matter to us? It's because for a long time, Kentucky has used pay types to determine non-match versus federal match pay and what type of TRS deduction applies to that pay, because they do have different rates. And this is done via the payroll exceptions program and where pay types are defined. And that's why we've always had non-match versus federal match pay. So the pay types are going away in the allocations in version 2019. One thing though to note, this does not apply to GL allocations. If you have an employee that's 100% federally funded or 100% general fund funded, if you have that employee broken out between multiple GL accounts, as long as it's all non-match or all federal match, it does not impact them. It only applies if pay types are used, and we use pay types to determine non-match versus federal match pay for TRS deductions. So this is just a screen to show you what has changed. This is in version 11.3. That pay type column, you will no longer see that in version 2019. That has gone away. Before I kind of jumped into this webcast pretty quick, we did an Q&A box open. You will see that on your menu bar, there's two little chat bubbles with a question. If you have any questions during this webcast, please feel free to type your question in there, and we'll take some pauses during the presentation and answer any questions. And of course, at the end, I do have Kim York joining me today, is manning the box, and she may respond back to you instantly, or we'll answer the questions on air. So back to the webcast. So talked about how the pay types have been removed from the allocation screen, and reiterating who it really impacts. It's really impacting only certified, partially federally funded employees, those people that are between general fund and federal fund. And again, if it's a GL allocation where it's 100% non-match or fed match, it does not matter. You may have classified folks that are split between GL accounts. That doesn't matter because we're only concerned about these pay types and the way the pay types are used to determine TRS deductions. Of course, I always had to put that little asterisk up there saying it really should only impact your certified staff, maybe hybrid staff. Of course, there could be some instances where people are impacted if used pay types in the allocation. So what are your options? Option number one, you should be somewhat familiar with already. We've presented on this. You can continue as you're doing now. We're using pay types to denote federal funded pay or non-fed pay, but it is going to require you to have separate job salary records for those part employees, since those pay types have been removed from the allocation. Another thing with option number one, more math really is involved to split up records, and it can get a little, just a little more challenging. I've actually created a spreadsheet for you to help with the calculations. The other thing is the TRS pathway report will continue to use pay types to distinguish federal match pay. There's no changes required to the payroll exceptions table, but also something to remember that sites that use position control will require more work because you'll have to add positions. Also throw out here with option number 1, temporary. You wouldn't want to do this forever. If you choose to go ahead and upgrade without making any changes or splitting up job salary records, you can temporarily just fix those partially funded employees in payroll. Of course, they'll generate in, and you'll have to use the different pay types in payroll and manually work in payroll so the TRS deductions are calculated. If you have only a handful of employees, that might be something you want to consider, why you can consider what option you want to take going down the road. And we have a question here. I can see out of the corner about classified staff due to federal health insurance reimbursement. So that has nothing to do with this. That is driven by GL codes. So their job salary is going to remain the same. However you have them coded, they'll pull into federal reimbursement, whether they're certified or classified, based on their general ledger coding. So again, this really only impacts your certified staff because the pay types tell Munis what TRS deduction code is applicable. If they have a FedMatch pay type, Payroll Exceptions currently says, hey, that FedMatch pay type, for example, 155, should be getting the FedMatch deduction, and it knows not to charge non-match deduction on that earning. And when I talk about the TRS report, nothing's going to change. The federal pay types are going to remain. This is probably a screen you never mess with. It was set up a long time ago, and it's one of those set it and forget it. You'll see down at the bottom left of your screen under other pays, federal match, and that's where you denote what pay types are federal match. And the TRS report uses those pay types along with payroll exceptions to figure out what pay is federal match for your detail records in the TRS report. So what's option number 2? That's the new option. While this has functionality has existed, Munis heard our problem and added some oomph to the processing and exceptions so they can set up something called glcodesets. Our chart of accounts didn't quite work the way it was structured with being able to use that existing functionality, so they added some new stuff for us, and what's most likely going to be called glcodesets going forward. And what this does is using GL segments such as funds and project ranges tied together to tell payroll that the pay the employee is earning is subject to federal match or non-match pay. Those partially federally funded employees will not require those extra job salary records, and there are going to be no changes required to job salary records if you go this option. From my testing, playing around with doing both different options, I much prefer this option, but it is totally up to you guys on how you want to proceed. And just a little disclaimer there, you do want to verify that the accounts used in the allocations are correct, because I have noticed before testing some stuff that employee may be coded to a federal match pay type, but their job salary was, I'm sorry, the GL account on their job was not. So those didn't match. So again, it's going to go purely off of the GL account assigned to the employee in job salary. Another thing with option number 2, it's going to require a little more testing and diligence to ensure that payroll exceptions are updated correctly. But I've done all the hard work for you in the guide that was sent out in the email today. So a lot of that's already done, but you do need to double check that you're following the steps in the guide. And you can run a payroll and see how it's calculating. And I'm going to show you examples of that here as we finish up the webcast. So you can see how version 2019 does a great job of showing how deductions are calculated. Another thing to remember is this option is only going to be available in version 2019 and forward. So after you upgrade, of course, you can do this in your test environment now, but after you upgrade production, your live environment, you would have to make those changes in live as well. And as I mentioned, it's somewhat easy setup. You know, you're not going to be requiring multiple job salary records. And when we talk about that, an employee may have base pay, extended days, amongst other things, and it can get pretty ugly creating a bunch of different job salary records that are not needed. And the last tidbit was the TRS program is currently being updated to report employees based on these exception table changes. That I'm actually waiting on update to test today. We're almost there, so it's not ready for prime time yet, but we're doing some Q&A on it, and it should be ready any day now. If you decide to go to this, of course, you could always manually fix those detail records, but I anticipate the update to the TRS program to report this way will be available in the very, very near future. So, and the change on the report is it's an either or. So you'll be able to continue using the old or current way, or you can choose this option to the new way of reporting. In doing that, you would remove all the federal match pay types on the other pay screen down on that bottom right that I showed you earlier. That'll be removed, and there will be a new tab that says federal match code set, and you would put 1-to-1 in based on the instructions that I emailed, and then we'll be going over because that denotes what the federal match code set is. Again, we just a little talked about this. Why do we currently use pay types? It tells Munis what is subject to a deduction, whether it's taxes or you know, a TRS retirement deduction. In this screenshot, it shows the Fed match, and it's saying everything is excluded except, and that means everything would be subject to the Fed match except for the pay types seen on the list. So in this example, pay types 100 to 130, which are non-match deductions, are excluded from the Fed match. They would not be subject to the TRS Fed match deduction. So when you work in exceptions tables, you have to kind of flip your thinking. You're putting in what is not included. So the change here is we're going to use a little bit of a combination of the all pay types plus adding the GL account ranges using the GL. Some determinations you all can make is, you know, when do I want to do this? You can go option 1 can go ahead and be done now in version 11.3 before or after you upgrade. You make the decision, but I would say don't wait until right before your upgrade to decide how you want to proceed. Option number 2 can only be done in version 2019, so you would have to do that in production. And either way, you'll probably want to look at this before you upgrade to see how you want to go. And as I mentioned, if you do upgrade, you've upgraded and haven't made any of these changes, there's still workarounds. In payroll, you would just have to split the employee's pay up using pay types because it would not generate in. Say an employee had a pay type 105 and 155. After the upgrade, only 105 would come in, and you would have to manually split up the pay and put both pay types in payroll. It's not ideal, but there are workarounds, and we have 2 options on how you can proceed going forward. And the very first thing, no matter which option you take, you need to determine what employees are impacted, and this may help you decide which path to take. So in your payroll allocations program, in version 11.3, this is an example, you'll want to view all your allocations and see the pay types listed. So in that program, you select search and accept to view all the allocations. You want to note any allocations that contain pay types. And if you're good with Excel, you can dump this report out from Munis into a text file and convert it into Excel, and then you can sort information. You do have to do a little cleanup. And I'm going to give this plug, you know, if you're not really great with Excel, that's okay. This is a great opportunity to learn. I wasn't great with Excel, but over the years during these different tasks that we've had to do, whether it's in prior jobs or this current job, I forced myself to learn new things, and it's helped me down the road. So I'm super efficient in Excel, yet I'm still learning new things all the time. So that's my little plug for this next stage. So as I mentioned, you save it as a text file, and then you're going to open Excel to assist with the review. You'll select, your open button. You'll have to make sure that the file type is changed to all files, so you can find that text file and select open. Let me take a sip of water here. Excuse me one moment. Okay, so the next step here, this is usually, if you're not haven't done this a lot, this is always a whoa, scared me the first few times I did it, but it's actually pretty easy to use. This text import wizard will come up, and you simply click on the area where you want to insert a break, a line, a column in Excel. So you would click two spots there, before and after the pay column. On the far right, there you kind of scroll down to see what the text is down below, and you would see pay type. So you know that is where you want your column break, and you dump it out into Excel, and you can clean up, the top few rows, and then you can create a table using the headers that I've marked there in the red box where it says allocation, description. And we're really only concerned about the allocations that have pay types. Now, I'm guessing most districts have hundreds of allocations out there, right? Because they've been out there for many years. We're really only concerned about those that are tied to the active employees you have now, right? So you'll want to go into employee job salary, select search, do greater than 0 in that allocation field. You may even want to farther refine it so you only are looking at your certified people, because or employees that would be subject to TRS deductions. And then you'd have your found set of all the employees it would impact. And then you'd use this group of employees. You can dump it out to Excel via browse and compare it to your allocation report to see what employees have pay types on their allocation. Of course, you can just manually go in and look at the allocation too. That's another way, just giving you some options there. So at this point, you get to decide, am I going to do option 1 or option 2? If you only have a couple of employees, you may want to continue on doing the old way. That's entirely up to you. You may want to keep their job salary record as is, make a post-it note, every payroll. You're just going to manually add a federal match or non-match deduction on those small set of employees, and just manually do it and keep doing work as you've been doing for years, but knowing that the pay types are no longer going to work for the TRS report or generate into payroll, which drives the TRS deduction. So you have to do that manually in payroll. I'd really suggest you look at option 2 though, and give that a look over and consider going that route so you don't have to worry about all those extra job salary records. And I'll show you how that's done here in just a moment. But first, we're going to talk about option 1, about creating the separate job salary records. And this can get confusing and a little ugly, so hopefully I don't fumble too much as I go through it. But if you're not aware, you cannot reuse the same job class with another base pay. So for instance, in all the examples I'm going to use, you can't have the same job. We're using job 0255 with 2 different base pay types. And an example is 105 and 155, which is the non-match and federal match pay. Munis says you can only have 1 job base pay for a job, which it really does make sense. So we have to create a second job salary record if you want to continue to use pay types. So to do that, you will need to create new job class codes. And this is where it can get a little ugly, because you would be cluttering up your system with job classes that you maybe don't want to do. So something to consider. So this is a screenshot of version 2019. In 2019, the button says copy. In version 11.3, it says duplicate. So this 0255 job, I selected copy, going to create a exact same record of it, but it will have job 4255, which is in that range of numbers that you are allowed to use to create jobs at your district. In the end, though, they have to tie back to that summary class code. In this example, I used FedMatch to denote the difference. So you have now two job class masters, and one's the speech therapist and one's speech therapist FedMatch. Next part is updating the allocation, and this is where you get to have fun with math. There are some Excel files out there / calculators that's on this new KDE Enterprise ERP Munis SharePoint site that I'll be plugging, that you may have seen some emails on. We have a bunch of different files out there that are things that maybe we don't really want out on the main public KDE website, but still need you guys to have access to. So the bottom right, that's where that screenshot came from. So this example, the employee has 3 GL allocations. And the first 2 are to a general fund, and the bottom is coded to a federal account. So 90% of their pay goes to the general fund, with 10% to a federal fund. Their total salary is $45,430. That spreadsheet has 2 tabs, one for rounded versus no rounding. For simplicity's sakes, I chose rounding just for this example. Just something to keep in mind, because you may have budgeted to the penny on how much you have available in that fund to go to salaries, and if you elect to round, that could have some negative impact. So something to think about. In the spreadsheet, I put the original annual pay and put the new FTE, which would be 90%, because they are 0.9, because they are 90% general funded. The first GL allocation was at 15%, and the second was at 75%. And doing the math, it comes up with the new percentage of 17 and 83, because it has to equal 100% total allocation for that non-match job. In 11.3, you would just update the allocation, and then would update job salary to reflect that. But in 2019, we have effective dated pays, and Munis will add a new job salary record automatically and ask for effective date. So I just choose an arbitrary date of 1/15 in this example. So when you hop into job salary, remember, to update the FTE in version 2019, there are some new search features where you can search for current, all, historical, future, or a specific date. I'd probably suggest you keep that defaulted at current, so you're looking at what's there. But if you had dated that for the future, you would not see that newer record that you just created unless you chose all or future. Just want to make you aware that new functionality is there. So this example, again, that first job pay for the non-match pay, it created the record with a full FTE and their salary broken out at 17 and 83%. I do need to update the FTE to reflect the 0.9, because 90% of their pay comes from there. In version 2019, when you select update, it will give you this warning message that will keep coming up unless you check mark that box. And it's just a warning telling you, Munis uses effective dated pays. If you're actually changing the pay, you'd want to consider, for historical purposes, to duplicate, copy the current record. But this record is not yet correct, so I'm just going to continue on and hit OK and update it, and update the FTE to 0.9%, and their annual pay will now be reflected correctly with the GL lines down below at the correct dollar amounts as well. And I see we have some questions coming in. I'm going to stop after this section, and we'll look into the questions that we received so far. So the next step in this is creating a second employee job salary record. So this is that new job class that we created, and now it's using federal match pay type of 155. And this is pretty straightforward. It's just a 0.10 FTE. So you have to create that second one. And if you use position control, do refer to the guide that's out there. There are extra steps that you would do. If you use position control, I would really consider doing option number 2, where you're going to update the GL exception tables, or GL code sets and the exception tables. So, okay, you've done this on base pay. If the employee has extended days, you have to do the same thing, because the daily rate for extended days is calculated based on the employee's base pay record. And you would have 2 job salary records for the extended days, and have to do some, lack of a better word, messing around to get it to work. But it works, and it works with our reporting. So I chose an example here where the base pay is 100% non-match, but their extended days are partially federally funded. So again, you're going to need 2 job salary records because of the partially funded extended days. So you'd still need 2 job class codes, even if the job description says federal match. You would be able to use the same non-matched pay type on both job salary records. So they have 2 job salary records using the same pay type.
Kristen,
sure.
Just for interrupting, I think that it's not moving forward.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Should we still be on the extended day slide, or did you move forward to examples? It hasn't moved.
I moved forward. Can you see the base pays 100%?
No, it's still on the extended days titled slide.
Okay, well, thanks for stopping. Maybe we'll start again here. Give me a second. I'm going to hit stop presenting and start again. Okay, hopefully that's starting to come in for everybody. Can you see that, Kim?
It's still saying it will continue in a moment, so it's trying.
Let's see, Kristen, I'm just seeing a black box where it says content.
That's what I'm seeing too.
Well, let's give it another try. Let's try this. How about that?
Still showing a black box.
Well, now we're stuck because I want to show the option number 2 and not talk about this ugly option 1. Let's give it one more try. I don't know why
You gotta love technical issues.
It happens. Let's try that. Makes you wonder why it was working just fine and then it stops.
Yeah, it just stopped is what it did.
Well, while we're waiting, hopefully that catches up. Why don't we see if it catches up, and I'll answer some of these questions, okay? So questions about, can we delete old allocations we no longer use? Yes and no. The thing is, allocation codes, if you for some reason want to go back and see what the allocation was, it'll be gone. But I don't know why you would want to go back and look at that. It would be in payroll history, it shows how it was coded to the GL accounts. So that's really up to you if you want to delete the old allocations. If you have a lot of extra time and want to clean up those allocations, go right ahead. I imagine most people don't. So that's entirely up to you. But something you do need to remember, if you with this, that again, the pay types are no longer being used. So those allocation codes zap out the pay types from the allocation, and they're really not relevant anymore since you have to set up two job salary records. So let's see here. Let's see another question. Sorry, I'm reading this. The district I'm working with has not set up any allocation tables. Instead, they create allocations under the menu option in the job salary screen. I'm not aware of how, I mean, that's in version 11.3, I believe that takes you to the allocations. So one thing in version 2019, you don't even actually really need an allocation code from everything that we've done and people have tested. Down at the bottom of the screen, you can actually just code it to the different GL accounts that you want, and they come into payroll the exact same way. It's just not associated with a allocation code that I know oftentimes they're set up using the employee number. It's really not needed. Should all certified split records be set up in allocation tables? And no, that's not necessarily the case. I'd have to go in and look at that district to see what they're talking about. But everything that we've seen, allocations have used pay types for those people that are partially federally paid, and that's where we've run into a roadblock. Let's see, here's another question. Does this affect people who are paid 100% from federal grant but may teach ESS on the side on an hourly basis, which is then added to their pay? The answer to that is, okay, so they have their job salary record. And if we're talking about option one, let's put it this way. If you're talking about option one, they already have their job salary record set up at 100%. I'm assuming that if they're teaching extra at that point, it's not on their job salary record and it's being added in payroll somehow, and it would calculate correctly because you would be using a federal pay type. So as long as their pay is not split in an allocation, you are fine going forward. So are you all still seeing a black screen on my presentation?
That's what I'm seeing. Megan, are you down in the content? I'm seeing black still.
Yeah, we still are seeing a black screen. Is it possible for Kim to share it?
Possibly.
Yes, hold on.
Grab that, Kim.
Yep.
I'm gonna stop. It looks like I was at slide 27, Kim.
Okay, give me just a minute. Talk about yourselves.
So let's see here. Another question about, will I share my PowerPoint? They're helpful when I actually do the work. I've heard that there are some transitions on there. Technically, I'm supposed to make the PowerPoint a PDF before publishing, and it needs to be ADA accessible. I will drop the PowerPoint out on that KDE Enterprise ERP site that I've mentioned several times and we'll talk about again before the end of the presentation. It has all sorts of documents out there related to 2019. There were year-end documents out there from Tyler for, processing W-2s, 1099s. I just put some general stuff out there. It's not that we've gone away from the KDE website. Those are great guides and they need to stay there public, but these may be things that are from Tyler. They are actually Tyler documents and I can't put those on the KDE website or some other stuff. And it does require you to log in using your school email address and password. So I'll drop that out there after the presentation and send out information afterwards. Kim, are you able to share the screen?
Give me
Still
just
trying to find it.
Yes, I just was watching it through the presentation. I didn't have the actual presentation.
Because with this presenter view, I don't get to see what's up on the screen. So I guess I'll just have to cue you to change the screen, okay?
Yeah, that'll be great.
Okay.
And so, I apologize for the delay. I'm just about there. I had to sign in and everything.
If I haven't stressed enough yet, I would really consider option number 2 as I try to talk about splitting up these different job salary records. it does get ugly creating all these extra records that aren't needed. And then you're also creating these extra jobs. And once you create them, it's can't take them out. So it looks like we can't send that Kim's live. Why don't we just give me another chance and see. I don't know. 1 second. You know, guys, I have my VPN going. I'm going to disconnect it really quick. Maybe that'll help. I should be gone for just 1 quick second, maybe. Okay, let's give this a try. Okay, I'm trying to share my screen again. Hopefully it'll come through.
All right, Kristen, we got your screen back up. We're good to go.
Yay! Okay, I'm not sure if y'all can see me, but my hands are up in the air. Sorry, guys, there are technical difficulties. Sometimes the VPN is slows things down, so I unhooked that. So back to the base pay 100%, where it's 100% base pay, but it's partial funded, extended days. I'm not going to take too much more time talking about this. It's in the guide. The point is that you're going to have to create extra records, and it may look a little funny because the job description may say federal match, even though the pay type is not. You'd have to create 2 extended day records using a non-match and fed match pay type. And it works the same way if the base pay is 100% fed match and the extended days are partial federally funded. So let's move on to the next one. Base pay fed funded, base partial fed funded, and the extended days are 100%. So you have a partial fed fund on the base pay, but maybe your extended days are 100% local or 100% fed match. You're still going to need 2 job salary records for the extended days, and the same pay type can be used on both extended day job salary records because they're actually 2 separate jobs, but both records would be coded to a non-match GL account or fed match accounts. So this is an example. I do better sometimes visually. The person has that job class 255 with pay type 106 for extended days, and the other 10% is still coded. It's that new job class of 4255. The description says fed match, but the pay type is still a non-match, and it's coded GL-wise to non-match pay type, and it's at 10%. So this is why I'm saying that the second option may be better, because this just gets all sorts of confusing to do this way, or you'll just need to come up with another name for the description of that job class. Also, you have the situation, what if your extended day funding is not the same as your base day? So this person is split 50-50, federal versus general fund. So there's the 2 jobs with its split, but their extended days are actually split 60-40. So more math is now involved. You would have to take their total daily rate and multiply that by the number of extended days. Their fed match in this example is 60%. So you take 60% of that total amount equals the 1992. Then you'd have to take the 1992 and divide that by $166, which is half their daily rate, which is what that one of their job salary records would be. And that would equal 12 days. And then you do the same for the non-match, equals 8 days. And you would have to create 2 extended day job salary records. There's the non-match at 8 days and 40% or 0.4 for an FTE, and the fed match with at 60% or 0.6 FTE in 12 days. And these do work on PSD CSDs. We've looked at it, but it's just not pretty, but it works. So it is what it is. So we always have to say, generate a payroll and verify. Really, nothing should be different because it should be generating the payroll the same way as it was beforehand. But when you make these changes, you probably do want to. Somebody said I'm good at math, and that's really quite simple. It is quite simple till you start doing a whole bunch of records and your mind turns to mush. So it's just not something I care to do, but you could do if you want. And always make changes in your train or test environment first, I would suggest, before doing it in live. So option number 2, the long-awaited option number 2. You can only do this in version 2019, so go ahead and make the changes in test. Can't do it in 11.3 whatsoever. The functionality is not there. If you haven't upgraded yet, give it a try and test and document your changes. So once you go live, your production environment can be updated. If you're already running 2019, still give it a try and test and train before making any of those changes in production or live. So what if you've already split out all those job salary records? You've already done that work. You can go ahead and elect to combine those job salary records back to one record now, or make that effective at the beginning of the new fiscal year. If you change your exceptions tables, the deductions will calculate based on the GL coding, so it doesn't matter if the job salary records are split out or not. So if you make these changes to the exceptions tables now and want to run just off GL codes, it doesn't matter if the job salary records are split out or not, which is nice. So you can go ahead and set up these exceptions tables, and then at the beginning of the fiscal year have your job salary records kind of back to normal, where you only have one record for the base pay. And just note that if you already split out those records, you will need to indate the extra record, or else it will continue to be included when generating your payroll. So like that extra record 4255 would have to be ended, or else it would still be considered active. So how do we go about this? I keep talking about this new way of doing it. It's actually pretty simple. You're going to set up some new exceptions tables and something called GL code sets. So in the payroll exceptions program, there will be a button that says GL code sets. Select that from the ribbon. You'll add code set 1, and we're going to be calling that TRS NonMatch exclusion, and select the Add Edit Ranges button. I also have highlighted on here, or arrow to the right, it says Preview Code Set. This will allow you to, after you set up your code sets, to actually select Preview, and it'll show you all the GL accounts that you have and what's included in that range. So that's a pretty nice feature. So the GL code set 1 is going to indicate that non-match deductions would not be charged to any GL account not in Fund 2 and the federal project range. So that is a code set because we're doing a fund and a project together. And as I mentioned before, you can select to see the GL accounts that are included. The next is setting up GL code set 2. You'll select Add, enter 2. The description would be TRS FedMatch exclusion. Select the Add or Edit Ranges button. And from there, you're going to add GL code set 2, which is Fund 2, and Project 0 to the 1999 star and the 7,000,9999 star. And this indicates that FedMatch deductions would be charged to any GL account in Fund 2 and not in the federal project range, because the federal project range is not there. We're also going to have to do a separate setting in payroll exceptions to exclude Fund 1 from being charged FedMatch deductions. So the next thing to do to set everything up is you're going to want to review and identify all your pay types. So certified pay types that have TRS withheld, both non-match and federal match, you'll want to identify those. You'll want to identify all your classified pay types, those that have no TRS, and any other certified pay not subject to TRS, such as fringe benefits, You know, maybe there's certain reward pays and MOA, anything where it's not deducted. You may have only a small amount of pay types, and this won't be a very big challenge, but you may have a lot of pay types at your district, and if you do, you probably do want to print those out and maybe do some color coding to help you with that. So a little reminder, before you make any changes, please, of course, do this in your trainer test environment first. Take screenshots, or you can export via Excel all your current payroll exceptions. You go to that program, select search on all exceptions, select Excel, and it'll export everything to Excel, including all your exceptions, just not the ones for TRS. So you can go ahead and save those off before you make changes. So the TRS NonMatch deduction code, we need to update the current exclusion. So all certified pay types should be deleted from your current payroll exception. We will be using GL codes. We need to remove all those certified pay types. The only pay types that will remain are those not subject to TRS, such as classified pay, fringe benefits, the MOA, just anything that does not receive a TRS deduction. And it's important this update is made or it conflicts with the GL settings that we will be making, that GL code set. So remove all those certified pay types subject to TRS from the current non-match deduction. And this is an example of an updated exception table for deduction code 7000. And you'll see there's no certified pay types that the district uses on this screen. Typically, the 100 to 199 is always a certified pay type, maybe 300 for subs. Those have all been removed from the current exception table. So the next thing is adding the new GL code set for this deduction. So you'll select Add, and you're going to select the processing code. It will be 8, all pay types included except with segment, with seg, and you choose the GL segment as GL code set, and the exclusion range 1 to 1, and that indicates GL code set 1. So that may be clear as mud, but once you're all done, all your TRS non-match deductions will not be applied to the following: Pay and Fund 2 in that project range 2,000 to 6,999, and pay types that you've defined in the class, such as classified. So no TRS non-match deduction would be applied to anything that's in the Fed match range and the GL accounts or any classified pay or anything else that you define that should not have a TRS deduction. So you need to repeat this for the Fed match deductions. So again, all certified pay types should be deleted from your current payroll exception. The only thing that will remain are those not subject to TRS, such as classified pay, fringe benefits, anything that is not subject to TRS would be included. And again, we have another screenshot. This is a federal match deduction, and all certified pay has been removed from this exception. At that point, I'm going to add a GL code set for this 7001 deduction. I select Add. I'm going to choose that processing code 8. I'm going to select the GL code set, and the exclusion range will be 2 to 2, and that again is going to indicate that second GL code set that we created. We're not quite done yet, though. We still need to add an exclusion for Fund 1. So anything in Fund 1 is not charged a federal match deduction. So you select Add again. We'll choose that all types included except seg, the processing code 8. Except here on the GL segment, we will select Fund. And here we put 1 to 1. And this may be a little confusing because on the prior slide you see 2, 2, but that is a GL code set. The difference on this is we're saying Fund, and we're excluding Fund 1. In the documentation in this presentation, everything assumes employees are being paid in Fund 1 and 2. If you have employees being paid from some other fund, that would need to be addressed. So what did you just do with that? So the federal match deduction will not be applied to the following: any pay in Fund 1, would not be applied in Fund 2 and the project range 0 to 1999, which is possibly local projects. Again, the pay in Fund 2, but the project range starting at 7,000. And any pay types that you define, that would be like a classified pay type that maybe a teacher would receive for doing extra work that's not subject to TRS. And once you're done, you would need to repeat this for all the other TRS deductions that you have for the different tiers of employees. Critical shortage, can't say I run into a lot of those that help I've had with districts, but there likely be no change required because critical shortage contributions are applied to all certified earnings, no matter the funding mechanism. So that deduction code and exception table shouldn't have to be changed at all. So that'll continue to work as is. And I mentioned that really only classified wages not subject to TRS would be excluded from the critical shortage exception table, but you probably already have that set up as is. You don't need to make any changes. And this is an example in job salary. We have an employee, pay type 100 is certified, no match pay type, but down below is the allocation detail. If you note, the allocation is blank. The allocation code field is blank. It is actually allocated directly underneath in the detail. And the employee is split 50-50 with 50% of their pay on the first line to a general fund no match deduction and 50% to a federal code. So when you process payroll, they'll still have those two deductions and it will calculate the amounts. And the nice thing about 2019 that I really, really love, and it made it great to help test this process, is the payroll deduction detail. So when you double click on that deduction code, this screen will pop up and you can scroll through the different deductions. It shows the deduction gross down at the bottom, but what's new is over there on the right and the breakdown. And you can see the math and how they took the processing codes to calculate what the gross deduction should be. So I made a zoomed in screenshot here as an example. This employee, like I mentioned, was 50-50 with all their pay being coded to pay type 100, but the first line being a general fund, the second line being a federally funded account, and then you see processing code 8 on the third line, where it takes away that federally funded amount and comes up with the gross deduction of $1184.46, saying that amount is subject to non-match deduction. And that's what all those steps that I just walked you through, that's what this does. Another example, what if you needed to subtract TRS based on pay types that were left on the exception table? And I just threw a classified pay in here, assuming that for some reason this was not subject to TRS. This is again a no match deduction. And when I zoom in here, you'll see those three lines that were on the example on the previous screen. And then we see that additional pay that was thrown in, coded to I don't want to say non-match, a general fund, and then also a federal project. And you see where at the top it says processing code 8. Those are the glcodeset processing exceptions. And processing code 1 is where it's taking the pay types, those classified pay types that you left on the exception table, and subtracting that out to come up with the total deduction gross, so that only the earnings subject to TRS have the TRS withheld from it. So that may not make sense, everything that I just went through, but I did all the hard, I don't want to say I did the hard work. You guys have to do all the work at the districts and paying the people. I took the time to figure out how it works. I think the document is pretty easy to follow through and set up those GL code sets. takes a lot less time and effort than splitting out the job salary records. I'm going to switch over here to some questions we have in a moment, but we're here about the end of the presentation. I did want to say I'm going to try something new. I'm going to send out an invitation for office hours for a link that would be via Microsoft Teams. So you could talk to me and Kim about this processing changes. I'm going to set it from 11 to 12 p.m. on Thursdays starting March 3rd. Of course, you can reach out to us at any time still and send questions to the box. We always keep pushing the box, not the individual person. And the box is munis@education.ky.gov. And I keep talking about this new SharePoint site. I've sent out information on this in the past, and I'll send the URL out again. It is in like the reminder that I sent out today. There's some black text at the bottom that's bolded that says, hey, the KDE Munis guides are located here. Check this out here. And the link is also in that email that I sent out. But that's what you can see. It's on the screen. I will send it out later. And let's switch over to some questions here. Had somebody having some issues, not all pays pulling into payroll. I have had a few people that I'm aware of where their updates have not been running on their test environment. You may want to double check that you have access to Tyler Deploy. If you're the Munis administrator, you want to go ahead and start that process so you have it for when you go live in production. And being able to manage that, Tyler Deploy is much, did I say much enough? Much easier to use than the MIU. I do have a guide on how to set up the, you need an authenticator app on your phone. There's a guide actually out, again, on the SharePoint site for how to set that up. So you may want to double check that your environment is up to date, your test environment for updates. Let's see here. Next question. So the next question is, will there be any reason to continue to use multiple pay types once we set up these exceptions? Or could we potentially consolidate pay types if we are only using them for federal match? I guess the answer would be yes, and that's probably something districts are going to have to map out on their own. You may want to think about these federal pay types. Maybe you still want to use those because if an employee has any federal pay at all, maybe their job salary record should have a federal match pay type on it to help query. There's other ways to query, but yes, it takes away the need to have a non-match or fed match pay type. So that is something that could be considered for sure. Less pay types because you're not needing to split them out. You'll be using GL to say what gets TRS and what does not. I'm sorry, TRS fed match versus TRS non-match, and of course, no TRS. And another question, just to clarify, we only need one set of pay types. So I'm going to scroll back here on my screen. Give me just a second. So I talk about setting up the GL code sets. And yes, you would still need to have pay types, a pay type exception where you would exclude classified earnings or anything that is not subject to TRS, because there could be where you're paying a certified employee for some reason pay that is not subject to TRS, and you would not want TRS withheld on that pay. So we still need to keep that all pay types are included except the likelihood of that happening is I really don't know. That's maybe something you could play with. You may be able to delete that one table and not even need it at all. But I have to put it out there because each district is different on how they pay people. You may have a superintendent or something like that that's getting some reimbursement. Maybe it's subject to TRS, maybe it's not. don't know all the specifics, but yes, there is that potential of getting rid of that, but for now you probably want to keep it. And again, that takes testing to say for sure. Somebody says, I feel overwhelmed. Yes. So option number 1 to me is much more overwhelming than option 2 because you don't have to mess with all the different job salary records. The guide that I attached on the email is pretty straightforward on setting up these GL code sets. They are, sorry, I keep scrolling through here. Setting up a GL code set is so easy. It just takes a few keys to enter that information in. The part that's a little more tricky is going, hey, what's subject to TRS and what's not, to update that exception table, which is, sorry, I keep moving and I know the screen is slow to catch up, which is what we were talking about here earlier. So that maybe takes a little bit of figuring out, but that's why I said print up your pay types, figure out what's subject to TRS and what's not, so you know what should be included on the screen. Anything that would be subject to TRS, you delete from your exception table, because we're not going to be using that anymore. We'll be using GL codes to determine the TRS if you want to go that route. Let's see here. Someone said, I did option 1 back in the winter and want to transition to option 2, but the processing exception codes feel like unfamiliar ground. And they are unfamiliar ground because it's all new to everyone. So keep plugging, doing it in test or train. You know, that's the thing is, I know there's a bunch of different TRS exceptions. TRS deduction codes. So you have 2 for each tier of employee, right? If you want to test it and see how it works, maybe you just try it on code 7000 and 7001. That's what you have. Do that in your test environment. Look at a couple of people and see how it works. So you can play around. You don't have to do every single deduction code. Save yourself a few minutes. And the screen that I showed you, how the deduction breakdown calculates and how Munis shows you that's excellent to see how it's working. It was troubleshooting for me to figure out what I was doing. The hardest part for me was figuring out what pay types the district was using that was subject to TRS or not, but that's your own data, so you should be familiar with what pay types are subject to TRS or not. And again, we're going to be doing those office hours. So, and I mentioned in the meantime, we're still waiting for the final complete update to the TRS report that will accept the new way of reporting. I anticipate that any time. So if you're upgrading in the next couple weeks, you may want to consider doing this option 2 and maybe manually type in the pay types for now in payroll. But it's really just how many employees do you have and how do you want to work it? It's up to you. Somebody said, I mean, when setting up job pay, I guess talking about let's see here. Next question, will we have access to the recorded version of this presentation? Yes, our web broadcasting team does an excellent job of putting that out on the KDE media portal. But guess what? You have access to it at any time because the exact same link that you chose to watch it live is the same link that you would use to watch it recorded. Let's see here. Let me switch to the last page. Next question is, I know this is about allocations, but do you know if we have time entry batches open when we move over to the new version? It's probably not great to have those open if you're going through an upgrade, would be my question or my response. And that would probably be a question for payroll support that you would want to open a ticket on. Let's see, anything else? Looks like Kim published the URL for the enterprise documents. That's a rather long one. What you see on the screen is really that we use something at KDE called Safe Link. So anything that we copy and paste that's been forwarded, it adds a whole lot of extra to it. And anyway, The shortcut's here on the screen. It's
I
okay, Kim.
apologize for that. When I control V'd it in, I went, oh, wow.
Oh, whoops. Yep, it happens. I do it all the time and have to clean up some stuff. So, but that'll be on the email reminder I send out today. The guide that was on your email today, I'm waffling back and forth on whether to publish that on the KDE website, but most likely that will get published on our KDE website, the public website, under payroll statewide. And we're going to be doing office hours, so if you want to hop in and chat with us both on it, you're welcome to do that. And we have our box. I would suggest first really just print out the document, go look in your test environment. It works really well based on everything I've done. And that's everything I've done, those based on Fund 1 and Fund 2. If anybody out there is paying people from other funds, please let me know. We can take a look at that on what else you need as another GL code set that would need to be added to those TRS deductions and the exception tables. And I keep flipping like I'm not showing my screen. Sorry. Yes, I am on camera. So we're just going to sit here for a few minutes, see if there's any other questions. And that's all I had on the webcast today.
I've got one question in here, Kristen.
Okay.
Do you need me to read it? Can you see it?
Yeah, I'm flipping over here. What does it say? So I'll just read it aloud. If someone is 100% fed and does not have allocations, if we do away with pay types, looks like that would mess us up. That's correct. Well, no, if you're using option number 2, it would not mess it up. So would we have to change all their pay types to standard pay type? So it's option 1 or option 2. If you use option 1, no changes would happen. You would still continue breaking up the job salary records. You would still have a non-match and a fed match pay type. If you choose option number 2, it really doesn't matter what the certified pay type is, because TRS deduction will look entirely at the general ledger coding on that pay to determine if the pay should have a non-match or fed match deduction. So hopefully that answers that. And we did get somebody say that they pay people out of Fund 51 and 52. So we'll take a look at that. If you don't mind, Andrea, telling me which, I'm assuming, would those be federal match or non-match deductions on those funds? And that's probably should be a pretty simple new added GL code set. So we have a question about local taxes. Yes, there's actually an update out there I've been testing for city taxes, but it's referenced in our guide, but it doesn't go into it. I'd have to set up another kind of guide on it. There's a location in the allocation field where you would say like bus garage. Maybe bus garage is subject to tax while the other entities, schools are not. There's a way to use this setting to work on locations. And from my last round of testing, it was working, but the breakdown didn't show correctly, but it was working. So if you want to reach out to me through a separate email, a conversation for those folks, if you're using pay types to distinguish taxing jurisdictions, I'll be happy to have a short chat with you on that, and then we can work together on it. And let's see here. So it looks like they're saying that 51 is food service and it's non-match. So I think that would still work, because the way non-match is going to be set up is so once completed, your TRS non-match deductions would not be applied to the following: pay in Fund 2 in that federal fund project range. So if it's a certified pay type, and it doesn't fall in the federal match range, then TRS non-match would be deducted. So there actually be no additional setting required on there. Now, if there was being paid from a different fund and they received Fed match, we probably would need to make a slight adjustment to the GL code set. So, and just be adding an additional combination in there. Let's see. So again, we're just going to hang out here if we have any other questions. Well, thanks everybody for attending. Sorry for the technical difficulties in the middle of the webcast. I know this is new information, but the guide does step you through it. You know, you may say, hey, option 1 works best for us now, and that's fine. You can continue to do that. You know, it's totally how you guys want to do it. Munis listened to us though and made this TRS report. So it's an either or situation. You can keep processing payroll like you do now, or you can choose this new method with updating the exceptions tables. That update's not ready yet. It will be shortly, and once it is, I will let you guys know. Hopefully be very here in the next week, I hope. We've been working on it for a little while. So that's all I had today. So thanks everyone for watching, and I think we'll wrap it up. Have a good day.